Hello and welcome to the Focal Events Dirty Reiver Diaries. Your hosts today are Brian Singleton and Neil Atkinson.
Hi Neil, just over a week to go then before this year's 2024 Dirty Reiver. How's things looking?
Looking really good. I can't believe it's just over a week to go. It's just like all of a sudden it's here again, which is really exciting. And you know, from the emails and talking to people and expo brands that are coming, everyone's really excited. So yeah, it's going to be energetic and brilliant. Really is.
Yeah. So just ahead of our interview, we'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. I thought with listeners maybe dipping into this podcast the week before the event, it might be a nice time just to sort of look at some last minute preparations, etc., and think about what people might want to do in advance and what people should be carrying with them on the day. And I think 2023 was a different event for us. It was for the first time ever we had a little bit of rain, and I think that caught one or two people out. So I just wanted to look at the compulsory kit list and just say a little bit why we asked people to carry those. So well, a couple off the top of there. First of all, whistle. Always good to have a little whistle with you just in case you need to, kind of call for a bit of help. We also put on there a survival blanket. Super small, super cheap, and if you get waylaid to hang around for a bit, you can just sort of wrap yourself in that. And then a phone. There's not a lot of phone signal in Kielder, but yeah, there are places where you can get a little bit of signal if you do need to make an emergency call. So,
on that, right? Do you know the new iPhones? The subscribe to you get free for the first year.
Yeah,
a satellite signal. So even if you're out of signal, you can get satellite signal. So, and I think that becomes free for the first year. Then after that, you need to pay for it. But yeah, so it's worthwhile noting, is that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, okay, that's a good point, Neil. And then in terms of a bit of personal kit, we do ask every rider as part of the compulsory list to carry a waterproof, and we usually define a waterproof as something that has taped seams. Now you can get some pretty small ones of those. I know for a fact that Le Col are going to bring some with them. So if you do forget yours, pop over to the guy Col, and they might have something that you can borrow for the day. But yeah, definitely a waterproof, Neil.
Absolutely. And I always go one with a hood. It might be a little bit extra weight as well, but if I do get out there and I am cold, I've always got a hood to put up. Whether it goes under my helmet, over my helmet, it just keeps my head warm, which is really important.
Yeah. They double up as a windproof as well. So if you stop at a feed station, feel a bit chilly, putting a waterproof on is a great way just to warm yourself up.
And to be honest, last year those people who everybody should have had one with them, but we did notice those people who came back without one, and they were suffering. So it's a must, guys. You must take one with you.
Yeah. I mean, all these things that are on the compulsory list here, that they're not big items, and if you do look around, you can pick these things up. They're fairly small pack size, so that you don't need to be going with a full set of bike packing bags for sure. So one other thing on there we say is like a buff or something to go on your head. We all know that how much heat you lose out of your head, don't we, Neil?
Well, we do, and having as much hair or as little hair as I do, I definitely need something like that most of the time, even to protect myself from the sun or to protect myself and keep the heat in.
Yeah. I think as well that it's an early start. Some people will be out riding for 10 hours, and over that period of time, there's a lot that can happen with the weather and certainly the temperature. So, and one final one then.
Sorry about that, Brian. It was just it is to keep your head warm as well. But it's also, I have come back from rides because I've not much hair on top with a stripy head because of the sun goes straight through the vents on the top and burns my head at the top. And if I've got a hat or anything like that on, it does protect it from there, and that's really important as well. So yeah.
One last one then. We do ask people to carry a spare thermal top. So something that's not like a T-shirt, nothing cotton, something that that is warm when it's a little bit damp. But yeah, in combination with those spare stuff, if you do get a little bit of a soaking in a shower, you do have some clothing that you can put on, just keep yourself warm. Sometimes people, you get a puncture. You might be stood by the side of the trail for 15 minutes, sort of sorting yourself out. So just having that bit of kit that just helps make that a bit safer, I think is a good idea. So yeah. What else we got on the list then, Neil?
Lights. They're not massive lights. They're just a minimum burn of 2 hours and 200 lumens. They're only light these days. There's only small, compact, and simpler reasons is because anything can happen out there. And when you're coming back into Kielder, it'll be getting dark around 9 to 10ish, depending on the weather conditions. And we don't want anybody out there with no lights. It's just to get home safe. So stick them on your bikes, guys. It's they don't weigh much at all, but it's a really good safety feature.
Yeah, and I think we do, although most of the route is off-road, we do come onto the public highway on occasion, and even during the day, if the visibility isn't brilliant, just having that light can really help. So even if you're planning on finishing in the daylight, you never know what might happen. You might end up riding back on the road. You might end up finishing and it's getting a little bit dusk. So please put your lights on. Even if you're planning on getting around in a record time, everyone should have lights. So bike spares. Again, going back to the compulsory list, we've got tube, obviously. Even if you're running tubeless, there will or may come a point when you can't fix that or do anything with a tubeless system that's gone down. So please make sure you've got the correct tubing and some levers, obviously. We also would recommend on the compulsory list a pump. If you've got CO2 canisters, that's great, but you can only use them once. So please do make sure you've got a pump with you and a tool.
A lot of people ask us questions. I've got CO2. Why do I need to take a pump?
Yeah,
and it's simply because a pump lasts forever, and you can keep pumping everything up. CO2 only lasts as many times as it can. So you might have 4 punches out there. You may be able to borrow some inner tubes from people, but if you don't have a pump, you run out of CO2. You're not going to blow it up with your mouth.
Yeah. No, that is a good one and something that everyone should be looking to make sure they've got with them. Brilliant. Any other recommendations above and beyond that, Neil? What about you? What have you got in your bag? Anything?
Well, do you know what? We've got some stuff, and I do know with Stuart from SRAM that we're interviewing later on. He's got some really good top tips in there as well. So maybe we should leave a couple of nuggets for Stuart there as well.
What were we going to say about GPX files, Neil?
So make sure that you've got your files downloaded onto your GPS system before you or your head unit before you leave home to make sure it works. In and around Kielder area, telephone signal isn't good at all. So some systems you need a telephone to be able to track it across to your device. Now, if you don't have signal, sometimes you can't do that. So if you do it at home, you then know it's on there. And do you know what I do as well? I delete all the other stuff on my GPS system. So I've just got that one route on. So it's not going to be able to get confused when I upload it to try and find a signal, stuff on there. So it's only got one thing to sort out. So upload your route before you set off and clear your system out of your histories and rides and potential routes that you're going to go on. So yeah, clear them out.
So the final rider brief and all the event information is on the website, and it went out by your email. But definitely you need to take a little bit of time out just to read through that rider brief. There's some super important information in there. One of the things I just wanted to touch on was drop bags. Where's the drop bags going to this year, Neil?
Drop bags are going to go around to feed 2.
Yeah. So just to be clear, the drop bags are for the 130 and the 200 kilometre riders, and they will be at feed 2 on the route, unless you take, or unless you do cut short at some point, in which case it'll be the first feed station you come to. So this is for 130k and 200 riders only. There is an option to, for us, we'll take a drop bag to you to that feed station. And we'll provide a bag for you at registration. and it's an ideal opportunity just to send ahead. Bearing in mind that this is about 100, just over 100k, send ahead any sort of specific sports nutrition that you have, or any sort of tasty treats that you know that you fancy or crave at that particular distance. You've done the event a few times before, Neil. I've ridden it a lot, but not actually done the event. What sort of stuff did you put in your drop bag?
Oh, I'm a bit weird, really. Not just on eating, but on quite a lot of things. But do you know what? I have there something that I know I'm going to like. So one year I took hot cross buns with some cheese in and put them there because I knew that I was going to like it when I got there. Other times I know often when I'm on my own adventures, I take a normal sandwich with whether it's a cheese and beetroot, so it's got a bit of moisture in there as well that I can eat. I also take other nutrition stuff along as well, but I need something so my stomach gets filled rather than it just being empty. So it's whatever you like, whatever you would normally eat, take that into your drop bag. As long as it's not going to get affected by the heat or anything like that, that's the main thing.
Yeah, and nothing valuable, of course. Don't put anything in there that's got a value to it, because transporting and return and retrieval of those kind of things can be a little bit tricky. I mean, just leads us to a little bit to feed station. You never know what's going to be there, but just generally from our side, we tend to have a mix of things. Bananas, sweets, Jaffa cakes, flapjacks, fig rolls would be sort of pretty standard fare. Some of the feed stations we might have soup and rolls, something a bit savoury. I certainly think that the further you get into an event, the more you sometimes crave something that's not so sweet. But don't assume that that there's going to be exactly what you would want at a feed station. So the feed stations are there just to supplement what you would be carrying anyway, because the whole thing about gravel riding is that you have a degree of self-reliance, and it's very interesting actually. Kind of watching the now World Championships gravel events and seeing for the very first time that the pro riders are carrying their own puncture kits, their own sets of spares, because there isn't that backup and there isn't that support. So gravel is very much about being independent, looking after yourself, and then supplementing that with some bits and pieces on the way. So yeah, and
it's that thing of eating early and eating often. Don't wait to a feed station to eat. I've set a timer on my head unit, on my Wahoo head unit, and that goes off every half an hour. And every half an hour, I try and eat something to be able to put it in. And if that happens when I get to a feed station, it's even better. But that's the side issue is the feed station. I've got enough with me to be able to eat something on a regular basis.
Yeah. And for those of you that have listened to one or two of the podcasts, we did interview Ian Boswell from Wahoo a couple of editions ago, and he said a little bit about how he uses his Wahoo head unit to make sure that he's feeding and looking after himself while on the course. So some good tips in that podcast for you to listen to as well. So, we've already given the game away as to who we've got. So we have the pleasure of talking to Stu Bowers from SRAM, and let's hear what Stu has to say in the final week of the event. So, welcome back to our Panaracer Dirty Reiver Diaries, and very pleased to welcome Stu Bowers to this podcast. Stu's been on the UK cycling scene for many, many years. You may know him as editor of Cyclist magazine, or through a racing career spanning mountain bike, cyclocross and road. I don't think there's anything Stu hasn't done on a bike. He's also a regular top 10 finisher in many national mountain bike events. So what a perfect person to chat to ahead of the Dirty Reiver. Stu now heads up the SRAM partnerships in Northern Europe and is based in the UK, very much, kind of keen on UK events. And what a wealth of widening experience we've got here. So the ideal person to chat to in our preparation for the Dirty Reiver. So welcome, Stu. How are you doing?
Really good. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me along. Pleased to be here, and looking forward to chatting and actually also attending the Dirty Reiver in around 10 days time now.
So just before we start diving into gravel events, I just wanted to touch very briefly on a slightly different topic, Paris-Roubaix. It's wow, God, it's one of the hardest events there is out there. And it, you know, you look at some of the terrain there, and yeah, those guys are definitely racing some pretty gnarly sections. Did you watch the event, Stu? I don't think you did you?
Not this year. It's a shame because normally Roubaix is one of those ones definitely that you want to be watching every year. It's always an exciting race. I love it for sure. But no, this year family stuff took precedent, I'm afraid. These days life is a little bit different. You know, having a little daughter to look after. But no, so sadly missed it. But obviously I caught up on all the details of the race on Sunday evening. Another superhuman performance from Van der Poel. Yeah. He continues to amaze everyone, I think, with what he's capable of doing on a bike. A shame to have Wout missing, because obviously that duel between those two, like Goliaths, has become a real thing. Across the cross season, but also into the classics, it would have been ace to see those guys going head to head. But sadly, that wasn't the case. But no, still kudos to MVP. I mean, wow, what a ride.
Yeah, and also nice to see the likes of Gianni Vermeersch there doing such a fantastic, kind of ride himself as not only domestique, but really hitting out and giving the guys a bit of a rib in there. And he's an ex-world gravel champion, so there's got to be some benefits from riding gravel as transferring it across into road riding.
Definitely, and also the mountain bike. I mean, Pidcock is one that comes up a lot with that. I actually saw some Instagram footage of him doing some like sideways bunny hop out of the gutter across a ditch back onto the cobbles, and yeah, it's amazing. People always pick up on Pidcock's skills on a bike, but I don't think he's the only one, right? He's amongst a group of really skilled athletes that all of those guys are incredible bike riders, and they've got a lot of skills. MVP as well. He's had mountain bike World Cup wins under his belt, so these guys can ride bikes. They're not just engines, they've got skills as well.
Yeah, and it is nice to see those lines blurring between all the disciplines, and we're in this super exciting time with all these riders, these superstar riders that can just ride anything. And yeah, that's just one thing I wanted to ask you really was you've obviously done lots of disciplines in your racing and riding career, and if we separate them out into kind of road or mountain bike or cyclocross, and then think about gravel, is what sort of skills do you think are transferable, Stu?
Well, I think the way the gravel racing scene is going, there's maybe less of a technical element and a bit more of a kind of a putting down the horsepower element. If you see the way the courses are going, it's going to suit the road guys, I think, more. And that is why I think we're seeing so many of the World Tour kind of ex-pros automatically going straight into that gravel space, because they see the benefit of being able to just shove out huge watts for long periods of time in the saddle, whereas the mountain bike guys are a bit less used to that. I mean, a mountain bike elite World Cup race is like an hour and 20 minutes, something like that, hour and a half probably maximum. Whereas, the ex-World Tour guys are used to racing hard for 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. So, and the gravel races tend to be longer distances. So I think it is suited to those guys. That's why we're seeing, riders like Nicholas Roach, Nicky Terpstra, and some of the Thomas Dekker was the other one I was thinking of. Yeah, like those World Tour pros and the Dutch Mafia, as they're known across in the Netherlands there. But yeah, I think we're going to see more of that as well, as people want to continue their racing career, and the gravel is the obvious place to do that. Yeah. So bringing full circle, coming back to sort of Dirty Reiver, it'd be great to just sort of chat to you about about some event prep and perhaps your experiences on having done multiple events and done lots of these kind of things before. So let's look at the Reiver. Stu, you're obviously, kind of very technically minded. I just want to, pick your brains on when you pack for the Reiver, what are the key things that you're carrying in with you for the event? So you've got a 130 or a 200k event, Dirty Reiver. You're kind of out in the sticks. What is it you're carrying with you for an event like that? Well, I think the Reiver is unique in a number of ways. And one of the key things that people who haven't done this event before will notice straight away is the style of the what we call the fire roads or the gravel roads, if you like, is pretty rugged in parts. So where I live, I'm down in the south in the New Forest, and we have a really good gravel scene down here. There's a ton of forest roads to go and play on the gravel bike. But the gravel is, I would say, a lot more smooth. It's sort of more packed, so it's a lot neater, and the stones are not as sharp. Whereas when you see the ruggedness of the gravel roads in the forest, I'll be, correct me if I'm wrong, is it like more of a crushed granite? It's like really gnarly in parts. And so I think the first thing you notice, or the first year I did it, is there was a lot of punches. Yeah. So, in those early kilometers, you saw people, especially as the fast guys were creating that year, the first year I did it, it was warm. So there was this big ball of dust traveling at high speed through the forest. And if you were in that ball of dust, which I was that year, you couldn't really see everything in front of you so clearly. So there were, potholes in the fire roads. There were these patches of kind of deeper, sharper, more chunky gravel off to the edges. And if you weren't careful, that was a death trap for your tires. So there were a lot of punches early on. So if I'm prepping for this event, that's certainly going to be on my mind, and I'm going to be thinking about being prepped for that. And by that, I mean leaving behind at home those like super lightweight, really kind of skinny, minimalist race tires. I don't think that's the choice for Reiver. I would go with a tire that's got a bit more substance about it, a bit sort of more of a durable sidewall, and something with a little bit of tread. Steering clear of those like the minimalist slick, and also a bit of width as well, just to give you that tire volume.
Yeah. I guess as well that early on in the event, you might not be able to choose the optimum line. Sometimes if you are traveling with that front group, or if you're just traveling with a group in general, you might not be able to choose the smoothest line. You might get forced into something that's a little less smooth.
Yeah, 100%. That's a really good point, because when you are in a group of riders, sometimes traveling at reasonable speeds, because obviously there's gradient change in Kilda, and so sometimes you're going to be downhill, and there's those like swooping S-bends on the downhill fire roads where you sometimes you want to follow a line, but as you say, it might not be available. So you need to be able to react on the fly a little bit. So always, I think a really good hint for anyone riding this event is to look ahead as far as you can and kind of plan, because then if you can see a pothole, if you're able to bunny hop or whatever, that's great. You can take evasive action, but planning is crucial for sure.
If you were forced onto a line and not on the A line, let's say, and you were forced onto the B line, which isn't as smooth, would you then sort of drop back and try and get onto that A line, or would you try and power past them, or what would you try and do?
I think the first thing is just don't panic. There's, I would say a reaction to that could potentially cause you to crash. If you suddenly panicked, I'm on the wrong line, and you tried to make a last minute change, that's where you could maybe lose control, on a loose patch of gravel or whatever, or maybe you didn't spot a rider that was quite close in behind you, maybe he was overlapping your wheel or something, and then there's a touch of wheels in the group, and then the next thing you know, you're in a ball of people on the floor. So you don't want that to happen. So I would say if you're on the wrong line, sometimes the best thing is to suck it up, don't panic, try and ride through it.
No, I think that whole keeping relaxed thing is a really good tip. The worst thing you can do is sort of lock up and get rigid, because then your bike's bouncing around and it's then transmitting that straight to you. So keeping relaxed is definitely the way forward. And then in terms of spares, Stu, if we just mentally tick off what's in your spare pack, what have you got in there, and any juicy tips that you can pass on? I seem to remember a ride with you in Wales looking at an event, and you magicked out of your pack something that I really liked, and it was a magnetic inflator with some sort of tire plugs in it as well, which I hadn't come across before. It was a great tip. Have you got any more for us, Stu?
Well, I think the best tip I can offer anyone is just to really be critical about what you take with you on the ride. I see so many people on these events that have got what seems to me to be like everything in the kitchen sink strapped to their bike. They're bringing handlebar bags and frame bags and seat bags, and ultimately, Dirty Reiver isn't a bike packing event. It's, to all intent and purposes, people are treating it a bit like a race, right? I mean, I know it's not a race officially, but it is. There's a start line and there's a finish line. So in the minds of a lot of people, there's an expectation of, let's say, a finishing time or a finishing position there. So
Yeah.
If you're looking at an event from those perspectives, I would say, like, think about the gains that you can have by just not having all that extra weight and stuff bouncing around and just annoying you on the bike. You know, I see the one that really just amazes me is people have these huge seat bags strapped under their saddle, and you can see it clearly rubbing on the inside of their thighs every time they're their legs are moving on the ride, and you're just thinking, is that not just driving you insane? It would do me for sure. So yeah, my thing always is go minimalist. Think about what you're actually going to need, and I think, yeah, as we said, punches are going to be something you need to be prepared for. It can happen anytime, as we know, on any ride. So tire plugs for the tubeless tire users, which I would think by this point in time is most people. I think that conversion has happened now pretty much across the board, and people are used to using tubeless with sealant inside the tire. Yeah. So that in itself is great, because there may be punches happening on your tire that you're not even aware that you've flatted, because the sealant's done a great job, almost instantaneously sealed up the hole if it's small enough, and boom, you're riding without even knowing. Sometimes you can feel a bit of sealant spraying on your shin or something if it's come off the front wheel, and you're like, oh, what's that? And then you notice, it's sealant. Before you know it, it's done the job. It's fixed the puncture. So that's great. But for those times when that isn't going to be enough, if the hole is a bit bigger and the sealant's struggling, then the tire plugs that you mentioned, and that was something I had with me before, that is going to be your savior, because with a tire plug, you can fix that flat without even removing the wheel from the bike. So you can roll to a stop. And again, watch when you're rolling to a stop. If you're in a group, don't just slam the brakes on. That's another good thing. Just be aware of people around you if you're going to do that. And then, just get the tire plug out. And a good tip for that is keep the tire plug somewhere handy, because what you don't want ideally is that tire to go completely flat. I mean, sometimes that's going to have happened. If it's a big cut, then your tire's just gone, fine. But for the most part, because there is sealant in there, what I find is the tire is going to go down relatively steady. So you want to be able to catch that while there's still some air in the tire. And the reason why that's important is because it makes putting the plug through so much easier. The tire is kind of holding its shape. Yeah. So have that tire plug system, whatever one you're using, and there's some great ones on the market from all kinds of manufacturers. But whatever one you choose, just have it either taped on the underside of the handlebar or under the stem. You mentioned I use a magnetic one, Brian, which is really actually super neat. I just have it on a magnet underneath either my top tube or my stem, so I can reach for it in seconds and have that plug fitted through the hole. And you can usually find the hole really quick, especially, again, you're going to look for the sealant popping out through the tire. There's your guide straight away for where the hole is, and boom, job done. And then you can choose then, if you need to if you've lost a lot of air, obviously top up. Air canisters are great for that because of the speed of it, but they're a little bit difficult sometimes to control, depending again on which one you're using in terms of like the inflation device. So you might choose to just have a small mini pump or something instead. And obviously then with a mini pump, you've got infinite uses, whereas air canisters are a one and done kind of thing. But ultimately go minimalist. And the other thing I would say is practice it first. That you don't ideally want your first ever experience of using a tire plug to be on the side of a road on a wet day when the wind is howling at Dirty Reiver, which could happen. We're going to pray it's not going to happen, because we've all had wet, windy, dirty Reivers, and we prefer the dry, sunny, dusty ones.
Yeah. And then obviously you are carrying a tube as backup, Stu,
Always, because there's always that chance that no matter what you've got in your tire plugs armory, it's just not going to do the job. I think my personal best for tire plugs is 4 in one single hole. That's a good thing to mention. I don't know if people are always aware of that. Like sometimes if the tire plug's not enough, put another one in. You can keep adding until you literally fill that void with rubber. That's something worth noting. But there's going to be times where maybe you've got a big cut in the sidewall where a plug is just not appropriate and is not going to fix it, and then you need to go for plan B, and you always need plan B. So for me, plan B, I like to keep with me in my spares pack an old section of road tire. And this is something I think is a really good tip again. So if you've got an old sort of 28 mil road tire kicking around, cut just with a pair of scissors the beads off the tire and cut yourself a strip of about 4 or 5 inches of tire and just have it with you. And that way, like in that moment where you're looking for the ideal object to pack out the inside of your split tire, or having a bit of actual tire is perfect, and it doesn't take up any space, or it doesn't add any weight to your pack. So that's a really good, useful one as well. So you're not having to then, like, I don't know, people use gel wrappers or 10-pound notes or whatever it is they've got in their pocket to pack out their tires with. But yeah, if you've actually got a purpose cut section, then again, you're guaranteed a good fix. Bang your tube in, and then you're away, and you're safe for the rest of the ride.
You mentioned before about an inner tube and stuff, and I've made the mistake before when I pulled an inner tube out of my emergency kit, and my valve just will not go through my rims because it's too short. So I think it's a really good point to make sure that everybody's got a long enough valve that goes through your rims, because that's the worst possible thing you can do is know that you've got an inner tube and then try and blow it up, and then your pump won't fit on it simply because it's lack of preparation.
100% agree with that. That is like a total schoolboy error, but we've all done it, right? So
the other thing is
actually, for a while, I mean, depending on the length of the event, I mean, if you're doing the 200, the other thing that you need to have in the back of your mind is if you use your tube in the first 30k, you've got 170k to do with no spare. So then you start to think, well, maybe I need to take a second one. But what I would definitely do if I was doing the longer distances is take a valve extender, for exactly the reason that you just pointed out there, Neil. Because if someone is stranded and you get a friendly rider who's going to donate their tube to you, well, again, you're back into that same scenario, is that your knight in shining armor has come along and said, don't worry, I'll give you my tube, and then it's a short valve, and then you're like, but it's no use to me. So if you actually just carry a small aluminium valve extender in your spares kit as well, then you're also covering your back for if you need to sort of beg, borrow and steal a tube from someone on the trail. So that's also another thing which takes up no space and can be a lifesaver.
Good tip, that one, because we do offer Panaracer offers some spare tubes at feed stations, but like you say, you can't guarantee that the valve is going to be the right length. So having that extender is definitely going to be a long way to saving you having a headache. So brilliant. So obviously, tubes, patches, that kind of stuff, CO2 pump, and then anything else that you think are common fixes that we come up against. Stu, anything on drivetrain, chains, that sort of stuff? Or
I mean, I think one of the other ones which is a bit of a struggle if it happens is a broken chain. I think these days it's a lot less prevalent than it was, let's say 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I just see it so much less now. But there is still a chance, if you get a weak link somehow, or if you're cross chaining and powering down at the wrong moment, you can potentially damage a chain or twist a link or something. So the chain is the other thing which I would definitely always want to be covered for. And for that, a simple chain breaker. Again, there's some nice minimalist ones. There's some that are built into multi-tools, but I'm not a massive fan of those, if I'm honest. The main reason that I say that is that half the time the multi-tools are packed with tools you don't need. How many times you needed a flat blade screwdriver or a crosshead Phillips screwdriver on a bike ride these days? There's literally going to be 2 or 3 key things that your bike needs. Probably a 4-min Allen key, a Torx 25 is pretty common, maybe a 5-min Allen key, but even the 5-min Allen keys now are getting less and less. Like a lot of stuff is 4s and Torx 25. So I would say assessing your bike to see what bits or what tools your bike actually needs, and not just having loads for the sake of it. But anyway, going back to the chain breaker thing, so then I would just pick just a chain tool on its own right, because then that's what it's primarily designed for. Because I've always found the ones that are kind of built into the side of a multi-tool can be such a faff, and they just don't work as easily and as efficiently. So that can be, again, a lifesaver, because then all you need to carry aside from that is just some of the quick links that are suited to the chain and speed of chain that you're using. So you get links designed for obviously 10 speed, 11 speed, 12 speed chains, whatever it is your bike has. Again, making sure you've got the correct link for your chain is important. And then all you're looking to do then is pair back that chain to the 2 kind of like male ends, or the matching ends, and then you can just bang in a quick link and you're back on the road. So that's probably the quickest fix. But I think a lot of people maybe don't always realize that you still need a chain tool to use a quick link. So they carry the quick links and they think, that's what I need if I break my chain. But you will probably still need to, take it back to the next clean link in order to use it. So that's important to do.
Yeah, I also think on that as well, Stu. Again, it's not a situation where you want to be trying that for the first time. So if you've got an old bit of chain at home, just practice joining that with a split link, because you can get a little tool that will, kind of release that. But yeah, just practice it at home for the first time. Don't leave it till event day and being in the middle of nowhere and finding that you don't know exactly what you're doing. So yeah,
100%. That's a really good advice as well.
Yeah.
Do you think people will listen to that, or do you think people will just end up freezing cold with numb hands when it's throwing it down, and only learn by that way rather than listening to people like yourself, Stu?
Well, YouTube's an amazing thing. You can learn pretty much anything you like on YouTube these days. So even if you don't want to go in the garage and start taking your old chains apart, at least watch a YouTube video and have that in your armory. I completely agree with Brian. Like, you shouldn't be trying this stuff for the first time when, as you say, you're stuck at the side of a fire road miles from help. It always helps to know a little bit.
Yeah. Brilliant. So that's a good round of the kind of some of the things we can, find or fall foul of on the event day. But there's a lot we can do in advance of the event. So just thinking in the kind of week leading up to the event, Stu, or even the night before you've got your bike off the rack, what sort of things would you be kind of glancing over or just checking over on your bike, perhaps, just pre-ride? You've potentially arrived at Kielder, or you're just on your way. What sort of things do you think you would be sort of just checking over and making sure that you're absolutely happy with?
Okay, so I think my 3 fundamental checkpoints for the bike would be, first and foremost, brake pads.
Yeah.
So I would again say we're probably almost all on disc brakes these days. And as we all know, that disc brake pads are pretty minimalist in their design. You don't get like a ton of meat to a disc brake pad. So you need to be just looking carefully at the amount of wear on your disc brake pads, and sort of making an assessment about the weather, particularly. That's one thing with Dirty Reiver, is the grit that you get from the surface of those fire roads and the trails up there is pretty abrasive. So if it is a wet day, my advice would be start with some fresh pads. Don't be using a set of pads that are 2/3 worn already, because that gives you 1/3 left. And if you run out somewhere, at the 70k mark, you don't want to have rubbish brakes for the remaining 130k or 60k if you're doing the dirty 130. So have that in your mind. Like, just make a mental note. Does it look like it's going to be a wet day? Therefore, have I got enough brake pads to cover me? So that would be my first check. I would also be checking for brake rub, because there is nothing more mentally draining in terms of your psyche than riding a long sportive with your brakes continually going, scraping on the disc rotor, because that will just drive you insane as well. So yeah, just checking brake setup and brake pad life. Those would be my first port of call. Then going back to the chain, I would just take time to sit and just have a really sort of detailed look at each link individually. Just turn the pedals backwards and just take a look at each link. Is there anything there that's standing out as like, ooh, that looks like a funny color, or is that a crack, or is that just a bit of dirt? Or, just have a little look at the chain and general wear and tear. And then it's probably too late at this point to be changing anything, unless obviously there's something seriously wrong, like you do find a cracked link. Obviously that would need dealing with, but you wouldn't want to be fitting a new chain the night before a race, ideally, because that could throw up a whole load of other problems. So it's a kind of run what you brung at this stage, but just checking everything is as good as it can be. And hopefully, if you've done your prep for this event well, you're going to be turning up to the race with your bike in pretty good order. You've probably put in a lot of training for this and built up over the past 6 months, or even since last year's event. Maybe you did it in 2023, you loved it so much you couldn't wait to get back this year, so you've been building up your form and fitness to do the 200 all year. So I would hope that within that prep somewhere you had the wherewithal to make sure your bike wasn't going to let you down, because that's that's a great shame when someone's put in a ton of effort physically and then forgotten about the fundamentals. So yeah, checking the chain and making sure that's all good. Finally, the tires. If you can already see that your tires have got some cuts in them, maybe the sidewalls are maybe looking a bit like they've got some cracks where the rubber's starting to get a bit old, those are also red flags for me. I would want to be starting this event just like the brake pads, almost on pretty new rubber.
Yeah.
I think people forget that the tires, especially on a road bike or a gravel bike, it's a tiny little contact patch that you have with the earth.
Yeah.
And when you're bombing down a fire road, that little contact patch with your tire is your lifeline to staying upright. And so why would you want to use, bad tires? I really think that, people are happy to spend a lot of money on fancy, shiny carbon and titanium parts for their bike because they look bling, but also think about the parts which are safe, going to keep you safe and also help with your performance at the end of the day.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so 3 things there just to check as you get the bike off the roof. And so that leads us into just, in quite nicely into, some just a bit more general discussion, kind of looking at, kind of gravel bikes in general. We've had a few people on the forums recently just asking, and emails asking about, kind of types of bikes for the event. And we've been, kind of recommending that, the route is ideal for a gravel specific bike. And I think, kind of SRAM have really been, really sort of embraced the gravel side of things over the last years with really specific components. And, people have been asking a little bit about, the differences between some of the drivetrains. Now, SRAM have the Explore range, which kind of we see on bikes, but there's also the mullet side of things. Stu, can you just sort of tell us a little bit more from with your SRAM tech hat on, a little bit more about the differences for those people who are kind of asking about those things now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think as you said, we as a brand, SRAM has owned that one by space. Since the beginning, really, we've really pushed hard in that since we had so much success with the launch of our mountain bike one by system, the Eagle drivetrain. So that has really been an area that we've got a lot of experience in, and we've developed a lot of products specifically to excel in that one by space. So you mentioned Explore there. That was a product we launched a couple of years back, which was, I wouldn't want to say it's gravel specific, because actually a lot of road guys use the ratio, because it's actually a really versatile ratio. But it's all about having the kind of sweet spot between what we had in the past was road cassettes, which maybe went up to like a 33 or a 36. And then there were mountain bike cassettes, which was more like 10 to, initially it was like 10 to 44. And then it went 1050, 1052. So there was this bit missing in the middle where I think people wanted that sweet spot. And that's what Explore was really designed to do. It sits in that kind of middle ground where you've got a 10 to 44 cassette with a specific derailleur to be compatible with that. But then that opens up a lot more options with regards to what you can do with the chainring size. Yeah. Because with the 10-tooth start, that's always been something that SRAM has been an advocate of. That means that you don't have to run such a big chainring. It's quite surprising, actually. Even on a road bike, I'm a big fan of one by road bikes. I've been running one by on the road for a long time where I live. And I think it's all about just picking the gearing that works for your ability, your fitness level, and where you ride your bike most. Yeah. And so, a one by road bike where I am is absolutely an option. And even with a 46 tooth chainring, I'm able to, ride a road bike in the local chain gang, evening rides and stuff, and keep up absolutely fine. And I often get comments from people regarding that, your chainring's really little, because they're running a sort of more standard double with, let's say a 39-53 or even a 34-50, which people are more used to seeing. And then they see a small ring and then immediately they're like, oh, that looks really unusual. But actually a 46 to 10 is still a pretty decent gear. I would challenge anyone to be able to spin that out on an average road ride. I'd like to see their Strava profiles if they're telling me they need bigger gears a lot of the time. So, that's a debate for another day, because we can go down that rabbit hole a lot. But ultimately, the one by gravel setup has become the go-to. We've got a lot of options. Explore, as I said, is that sort of 1044, nice middle ground between that mountain bike gearing and the road gearing. So that covers a lot of bases. But obviously, people do like having a bigger range. Maybe they live and ride somewhere where there's a lot of steep climbs. They like to be able to still ride those climbs. And that way, the mullet setup, which you mentioned, Brian, is really what we refer to as the mountain bike gearing out back, and then like the more road gearing out front. Yeah. Okay. I should say the gravel one by gearing out front. So with a mountain bike cassette, we've got the option of 10 to 50 or 10 to 52. And then just straight away you can see, obviously, then that opens up a much wider range. And then there's two ways of looking at that. We see that there's been a lot of popularity with that setup with the pro gravel riders that we sponsor. And the reason for that is they like the idea, let's say, because it's not entirely proven, that larger chain rings and larger diameter cogs, if you want to call them that, create less friction in a physical sense from an engineering standpoint, let's say. So having like a 48 or a 50 tooth chain ring then gives you that bigger curve. So again, less mechanical drag on the chain. So the pros are loving that. And then that 10 to 52 cassette option means that even with a 50 tooth chain ring, you've still got less than a 1-to-1 gear out back. So you'd be amazed how much you can still climb on a, even with a 50 tooth. I mean, I'm not advocating people use 50 tooth for Dirty Reiver. Let me make that clear. I certainly will not be using a 50 tooth chain ring at Dirty Reiver. You need to be definitely a pro to be considering those kind of gears around Kielder Forest. But I'm just using that as an example, because then all of a sudden you've got way more options that you can look at with the mullet setup. So I'm a fan of mullet. In fact, I will probably be bringing a bike with mullet on for this year at Dirty Reiver.
Okay, I was going to ask Stu, what would be your favoured setup for the Reiver in terms of, kind of gears? What you've said you're going to bring a mullet this year. Presumably, you've done it on an Explore setup as well.
Yeah, so I rode Explore at Dirty Reiver last year, and that was spot on. The only reason for bringing mullet this year is we recently obviously launched Eagle Transmission, which is our new mountain bike shifting technology, which uses a different way to mount the rear derailleur. So now taking away the hanger and being able to mount the rear derailleur with a full mount design directly to the frame. And as we're starting to see a few gravel manufacturers getting on board with that idea, which is the UDH rear derailleur hanger. So that's universal derailleur hanger. That was our technology to begin with. So as we see more UDH compatible gravel bikes, I'm kind of excited by that technology to use the new mountain bike transmission on the gravel side. So that's my plan for this year, is to just have a play with that setup. But yeah, hopefully as we see more gravel bikes coming with UDH compatibility, we'll also see that becoming more of a popular choice.
Yeah, and I think I think what's nice about the system is the fact that there's that compatibility with the road shifter that SRAM have, and whether it's the Explore, the road, or even the mountain bike rear mech.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think one of the things that's maybe misunderstood is SRAM Access is called Access because of accessibility to all the products. So it's not Axis, it's not AXS. It is Access, and Access means, as you said, that all the products with that on their name work with each other. So whether that's a seat post, whether that's a wireless blip, which also is another cool product for the gravel world. If I can drop those into I'll definitely be running wireless blips on my bike. It just gives you that additional shift point.
What's a wireless blip?
So wireless blips are basically all additional shift buttons, and now with obviously the wireless design that we have, and we have proven for many years now, is that's the way that we have everything connected is wirelessly, and you can basically add up to 8 of these things into a system. So actually, you can have multiple shift points. The sprinters like to have them under the bar tape, low down in the drops, so that you can flick a gear if you need to in a sprint. That's unlikely to be happening for me at Dirty Reiver, so I won't be worrying about that. But where I really like them is actually on the underside of the bar, at the top section, sort of close towards where the bar tape finishes. And then you can really, like when you're riding with your hands resting on the top, you've just got that ability with your index finger or even your thumb to just flick the shift button underneath. So you're not having to go back to the hood every time. So that's another great little Axis product. So, but yeah, you're dead right. Everything with that Axis naming is compatible, and that's a really good thing. You can plug and play a lot.
And that's all a benefit to people riding, which is great. So, a lot to think about there, Stu. obviously, kind of a Dirty Reiver, you're going to be coming there representing SRAM and Zip as well. Is there anything in terms of your bike setup, in terms of the wheels side of things that you can offer out to us? Is there anything exciting that you can share?
Well, we have a specific gravel wheel set in the Zip family, which comes under the Explore naming. So there is a 101 Explore wheel set, which is specific to gravel in so much that it's more designed around like the versatility of that wheel, the strength, the durability, the comfort that it offers. But for me, that wouldn't be my number one choice for Dirty Reiver, because Dirty Reiver is a little bit more of a fast-paced, like for the majority, it's not super techy. It's not really gnarly, bumpy mountain bike style trails. It is forest road. So for me, our 303 Firecrest is always my go-to. That wheel is super capable in so many ways. It's light. It's obviously proven aerodynamic. So it's fast. It's good in crosswinds. But the key thing is now the most recent design or the most recent generations of 303 Firecrest has that 25mm internal rim width. And then that really just opens up that tire volume so much. I cannot state strongly enough how much of a difference that makes. So you look at it and you think, well, it can't make that much difference. It's a few millimeters, or back in the day we were running wheels that were maybe 19mm internal or whatever, and you think, well, how can it make that much difference? But if you really look at the profile of the tire, that's the big giveaway. And you go away from this sort of what we call like the light bulb shape of the tire, where it comes out of the rim and then immediately sort of balloons out in this light bulb fashion. And then the problem with that is, if you then start to run lower pressures, which of course we're all starting to get used to pressures dropping down now, and that's a big thing which we really push the messaging on our product side, is getting people to understand that you do not need to put 50 psi in a gravel tire. If you want a comfortable, grippy, efficient ride out of your bike, definitely be looking at lower tire pressures. But the problem with doing that when you've got a tire shape that's that kind of bulbous light bulb is then you get this really unstable feel. The tire rolls in turns and it just doesn't feel efficient at all. So the more you can kind of open up that rim space, you're increasing the air volume inside the tire, but you're also making the tire, if you wanted to look at it as more of an upturned U shape, where the sidewalls are a little bit more parallel and straight, and they're more in line with the rim as well. So that helps with aerodynamics, but really the key thing from a ride perspective is what you notice as a rider is how much it helps the feel of the bike. You keep that feel of being a fast, reactive, responsive ride, even though you can drop the tire pressures much lower, which helps obviously with grip, with comfort, and just that whole efficiency of the bike. So for me, as I say, 303 Firecrest is almost a go-to wheel for everything, actually. I mean, I love it on the road as well. So
I think what quite a lot of people don't realize is the Dirty Reiver 200 kilometers, it is pretty much 99% off-road, and that nod to having a comfortable bike, through whatever means that be, including tires and the rim and tire profile, I think is really important. But a lot of people come back thinking, wow, that was a lot of off-road riding. And so kind of looking after yourself with your tire pressures goes a long way to making that a more enjoyable experience. So Stu, there's been a lot in there to talk about. Certainly, well, I've learned some stuff, which has been great. Always is the case when we have a little conversation with you. So thinking ahead, obviously, to the event, what can people expect to see? What's happening around the SRAM and Zip tent at the Reiver this year, Stu? Can you just give us a very quick rundown of anything that you've got on the go?
Well, I mean, obviously, we will be running tech support for all riders there. We will, obviously be able to look after the SRAM riders with any last minute headaches that they might have, but we will generally, we'll do our best to look after all the riders, SRAM or otherwise. So that's a key reason for us to be there, to look after our end consumers. But also we'll have some really nice bikes on display. So in our booth, you'll see not just the tech support, but also a really nice kind of expo with some cool bikes. We've got some custom build bikes coming, some stuff a little bit more off the wall, and also a really interesting mountain bike, which we're going to bring with us this year with some really new technology that's only just launched on the suspension side of things from RockShox. That's a brand within our portfolio as well. So that's got some cool stuff that will, I think, catch people's eye. Also, obviously, we'll bring the product line up from Zip, so we can talk people through if they want to learn more about the wheels and some of the stuff that I've just touched on basically in this podcast. If you want to delve a little bit more into the details of why our rims are the way they are and that kind of thing. We got a women's ride, which is a SRAM and Zip sort of sponsored women's ride out on the Friday. So I'm really looking forward to seeing a good turnout for that. We've got some nice giveaways for the riders that show up for that as well. So any of the women that want to come and ride, we've got some ambassadors leading that activation. And we'll have you some nice gifts to give away for that as well. And then over the course of the weekend, we're going to run a little bit of fun, just like a treasure hunt, which I think will send people off into the forest in search of some clues. And then when they come back with a completed card, there'll be a little rubber stamp basically hidden at 6 points around the forest. It would just be a short ride. You don't have to ride another 200 Ks to go and get your clues. And then, we'll have some nice giveaways and the chance to win as well. One of our Explore wireless access group sets, the Apex, which launched just last year.
Yeah, fantastic. That sounds great. So
can I enter?
Go for it.
Cool. I'm on it.
Right, Stu. Well, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. A wealth of information for people. If you're heading up to the Reiver, that's definitely the podcast to listen to on the drive. So, Stu, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your insights and your knowledge. And we look forward to seeing you in a week or two's time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, and thanks for letting me rabbit on.
Yeah, you've been brilliant, Stu. You've been brilliant. You've so much knowledge. It's fantastic to share that. It really is.
Well, it's been a pleasure. And like I say, I look forward to the event. Can't wait.
Excellent. We'll see you soon.
All right. Good luck to everyone in their final preps.
Well, Neil, it's always great to chat to Stu. He just brings so many golden nuggets into the discussion with regard his top tips. What are your takeaways from that?
Quite a few, and like you say, he's such a knowledgeable guy, and he's been around the cycling scene for years. That sounds as if he's old, does that? He's not, but he's got such a wealth of knowledge. So takeaways from me are the valve extender. To be able to make sure that you've got an inner tube and you can extend it on there. Make sure you've got a pump, and that's come from Stuart's mouth there, which is great as well. And also have your plugs to be able to fix any punctures in a handy place rather than in the back of your saddlebag or wherever it may be, because the quicker you fix it, the quicker it is. So those top ones for me are those ones. They're really good.
Yeah, I do. And I think that, that was one I kind of came with, having those plugs super handy. So you can literally just like grab it and plug straight away before you lose all the air in the tyres. So yeah, I thought it was good. Also nice to have some discussion around those sort of drivetrain differences. The Explorer obviously is something that's been around for a year or two now. But super excited to hear about the Access Eagle setup, which, interestingly enough, I've been noticing the new Lauf bikes are coming with that 10 to 52 on the back with a mountain bike direct mount rear mech on it, and super excited to sort of hear from Lauf that we're going to get a chance to see those at the event this year. Yeah,
I can't wait to see that. I'm actually clearing a new space out in my bike storage area to be able to put one of those in. I haven't told Rachel yet though, but I will do eventually.
Is this an N+1 moment, Neil?
But they do look really good, and So I'm look at it. They are bringing a medium one to the Dirty Reiver this year.
What colour's the medium one, Neil?
Green as well.
Oh, it's that really nice green, is it? All right.
It's So I might just swap in for mine. I don't think you'll know.
Yeah. So. Please do take the opportunity to go to the Lauf stand and check out not only the SRAM side of it with the different gears, but look at the bikes as well. We've been riding them for quite a while now, and they are super impressive if you want a smooth ride. And I think for another podcast a little bit further down the line and just look at these. How gravel bikes are evolving and the challenges that gravel bikes have in terms of they've got to handle a lot of different types of terrain. So I agree with that, and I think Lauf
are across it, and in some parts really leaning on it as well. And I think it's really good. So let's leave that for another podcast without going into it now.
Yeah, that's the last podcast before the event. So we'll see you all in Kielder.
Yeah, see you up there, guys. Happy gravelling, travel safe, turn up early, enjoy the time, and give us a shout when you're there.